now. And welcome to tonight's session. So my name is Mike and I am with Admit. Admit's a really great community website for folks who are going through the application process for the top MBA programs around the globe. We cover about 40 to 50 MBA programs, and we do all things from application assistance, free profile reviews, big thing this time of the year called Decision Wire, where people will come in and let us know where they got in and if they got any money anywhere and what their decision points are and what they want to do post MBA. And we have this really great community of other applicants, including some folks from our team who will help you make those kinds of decisions, give you some advice, give you some feedback, which brings us to tonight's session, which is all about what you do now. If you did get an admittance in the past month or so, if you're still waiting on some decisions this next couple of days, and I know which schools you're waiting on, and I really hope you get some good news. That's what tonight's session is all about. It's you get those acceptances, whether it's by phone or by portal, and then what do you do? Where do you go? How do you make this decision? Do you even go to business school at all? And so we were able to join up with Juno, who's a really great organization. I'll let Pedro introduce Juno, but they brought together this amazing panel of folks from some of the top business schools who are going to talk about all those things, when they got the decisions, what they did afterwards, how they're able to select their school, and what's been going on in their first year. So with that, Pedro, I'll pass it off to you, and thanks for putting this together for us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Mike. And thank you all for joining. And thank you to my panelists and friends for agreeing to come on and talk a little bit about your experiences. I'm not going to make all this about Juno, just a quick intro on what we do. We're a student lending negotiation organization, and we were started by MBAs, predominantly for MBAs. So you'll be seeing us as you start to think about, after you make your first decisions on actually where to go and how to situate yourselves and leaving your job and all that fun stuff. When it comes to financing your MBA, that's where we can really help. And we're a free organization that basically uses collective bargaining to save folks money on private student loans. So that's enough about us. I'd love to kick this off by having everyone just give a quick introduction and their background professionally. Maybe add a little fun fact in there. And then I'll go left to right on my screen. And Miranda, you're lucky number one.
Oh, I'm always lucky number one. Okay, cool, awesome. Hey everyone, my name is Miranda Brigas. I'm a first year here at the Macomb School of Business, Hookham. My pre-MBA background is in digital marketing, was in digital marketing for the past 5.5, 6 years, anything from the agency side to the brand side, really working on partnerships, strategy internally, externally, and really everything in between. Going to Macomb's, I really wanted to focus on remaining functionally in marketing, but pivoting into the technology space. And thus far, I will be at Adobe this summer as a PMM for customer strategy, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, so fun fact, I was one of 4 women at UNC Chapel Hill on the men's rowing team as a coxswain.
I love that fun fact. And congrats on the internship. I didn't know that. That's amazing. Congratulations. Kenny, you're up next.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Kenny Allen. From Michigan, currently at Kellogg right now. I'm a first year in the 2I program. Spent 6 years working in insurance, everything from working as an actuary to digital transformation strategy, and used a lot of that experience, taking my technical skills to hopefully pivot into organizational behavior and people strategy. This summer, I'll be going to BCG Consulting, so very excited for that experience. And the fun fact I'll share is I actually make my own ice cream. So that's something that I've been spending a lot of time doing. Yeah.
I'm going to have to hit you up for that recipe after this call. Thanks, Kenny. Brittany?
Great. Hi, guys. I'm Brittany. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area, or Maryland, I should say specifically, so people don't think I'm from D.C. Before Tuck, I worked at IBM for about 2 years in their consulting practice, working on digital strategy, transformation, and ultimately product management. And then after that, decided to pivot into product management full-time at MasterCard, where I was a PM on installments. At Tuck, I am also still focused on PM, but with a tilt on startups. So looking specifically at female tech startups for the summer, still actively recruiting, but looking at a couple of different interesting companies, both in the Bay Area and also in New York City within the femtech space. So yeah, that's me.
Very exciting. Thanks, Brittany. Brandon, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon Rogers. Before HBS, I was working at Shell as an offshore engineer. So I worked on an oil and gas platform. While at HBS, I'm in RC, so I'm in my first year. And then this summer, I'll be working at Goldman Sachs in Houston, so making the pivot to finance.
Well, Brandon, we need a fun fact from you. Oh, and Brittany, I think we need
That
a
was
fun
my
fact
fun
from
fact.
as well.
My fun fact is I started talking at 9 months. So I talked before I can walk. And when I actually started walking, I started walking on April Fool's Day.
So you're sure your family loves to remind you of that fact.
And my fun
Mhm.
fact is that I can windsurf.
You have to teach us. What's the skill you need? Like, what's like the hardest part of windsurfing?
Controlling the sail, I would say, is the hardest part, especially if it's windy. It's very easy
Yeah,
for it to kind of like fly out of your hand, but
sounds terrifying. All right, I'm immediately out. Ryan, we got another Tucky here. Want to give a quick intro?
Yep. Hey, everybody. My name's Ryan Welt. Originally from West Palm Beach, Florida. Did my undergrad at Florida State. Prior to Tuck, I was living in DC, working for RSM, doing M&A consulting, so mainly around post-merger integration type work. And this summer we'll be interning with Deloitte Strategy Group in New York, so excited for that. Fun fact, I did not see snow until the age of 22. So my first winter up in Hanover has been very interesting, and it's been cool to adapt to all the snow that we get up here. So not as bad as I thought it would be. So
Yeah, I think people who are new to the snow always end up saying that, right? Where it's like, yeah, it could have been worse. Yeah. I grew up in like the Northeast, so I'm already sick of it. And I know Brandon is not about that snow life. All right, guys. Well, so let's just move into like the questions. And I think honestly, I love asking this. I think we asked this before, and it's, what did you do in that first 48 hours after you found out you were going to business school? I see Kenny, you got a little smile on his face. So we're gonna popcorn. I'm gonna be calling people. So Kenny, why don't you go first?
I laughed because I actually had a really hard time celebrating. So when you said 48 hours, I was like, oh gosh, trying to think of what I did in the first 48 hours. So this was something that a friend had recommended to me, somebody else who was an MLT. Within the first 48 hours, I had decided to treat myself to a bartender set, essentially. And that was going to be my big gift. I normally don't buy anything special for myself. And so that was something that I treated myself to after finding out that I got into schools. Should I choose, or do you want to popcorn?
Yeah. Well, I'll choose. I'm moderating here. So, but I think honestly, the reason I'm asking this question, and I'm glad you touched on it, is like, this is such an intense period of time. I think we're all going through that. So like, it's important to try to de-stress. And like, I think the biggest piece of advice that we give is like trying to find that way to celebrate and like remove the anxiety and like allow yourself to feel good. And Brittany, you're up next to my list. Did you have any things, specific things that you did after you got in?
Yeah, so I did two things. One was I love foods. I treated myself to a steak dinner. So I got a nice steak from a good steakhouse in DC. And then I also went for a drive, honestly, just to like enjoy myself. Like I felt like the months of applying to school, like it felt like any time that wasn't spent focusing on the application was like wasted time. So I like went for a drive and enjoyed myself. I started watching more TV shows in the time after. So just like really took time to just like decompress and like really turn my brain off and eat a good steak.
Love that. Start with food. Miranda?
I feel like I'm an example of what not to do. I just actually didn't do anything. And part of it, I believe, was like truly to Kenny's point that we had been doing this for so long, you are working so hard, and to Brittany's point as well, that you're just in this like rat race mentality. So it didn't even dawn on me until probably a full month later that I'd gotten into business school, and now like multiple business schools. It was like, okay, it was like a checklist item. It was like, okay, great. And then I kept moving and I didn't stop. And what I will say from that a learning point for me, because that was not something that you should do, is to like take yourself out of that mentality. Even if you get into a school that's like maybe not your first choice, or it doesn't really matter what it is that like take yourself out of that box and like almost have like an out of body experience, because you will regret not taking a chance to acknowledge how far you've come and that you've accomplished something that you've been working for so long. So yeah, don't do what I did.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, right? Even just like the reflection of like, maybe you could have done some more things to relax, and the importance of it is super helpful. Ryan, I see you're off mute. Do you want to chime in with your thoughts?
Yep, valid for my AirPods, so perpetually off mute, but don't let that fool you. Yeah, I mean, I'll echo kind of what everybody else said. Just huge sigh of relief, and definitely reflected on. I mean, I think I got the call from Tuck 11 months after I started studying for the GMAT, and that 11 months was just super stressful. So just reflecting on all like the hard work and discipline and that went into the whole process. Calling friends and family. And I remember I actually went for a run, which was funny because I hate running, but I remember I just had like this natural energy and just wanted some sort of outlet. So yeah, I went for a run and kind of just reflected, celebrated with friends and family, and then took a big break. So
business school make you do a lot of things you don't aren't usually used to doing, so yeah. I can relate to that. Brandon, why don't you take us home? I know this meant a lot for you, your acceptance as well, so I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so initially I wanted to keep it super low key, but coincidentally my family all gathered. Found out I got in. There was a lot of jumping, a lot of excitement, and then also good luck to everyone who's going to find out about HBS decisions tomorrow. But then after that, it's like the call, so you get a million calls from HBS people, alums, and everything like that. And then I just tried to take a break, and then I remember the next day, you get your login information and everything. I'm just like, let me check to make sure that this actually works. After checking a couple of sites and seeing I could log in, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna take a break. I'm gonna really just try to like celebrate myself and just take a break, because it is very stressful. So I know a lot of people applying to business schools, you all are high achievers. You don't get the chance to really celebrate yourself. So really just take a chance and take a break and celebrate yourself.
I love that. It's poignant. I mean, I remember when I got in, I saw someone comment, they called their mom. I called my parents. I FaceTimed both of them and then just started crying, and they started crying. Because I don't think they fully understood what it meant to get in. They just knew how like much like we had worked to do it. So it was a good, it was a real palpable moment. And I guess, I'm going to pivot a tiny bit here, because I know like the decisions haven't come out yet. So I know it's hard to listen to like advice when you haven't gotten to that point yet, but I think we can all remember that feeling of just like everything for the first time in this whole process is just completely out of your hands, right? So if you could go back to the person that hadn't gotten accepted yet, or was still waiting on some answers, like what's one piece of advice that you would give yourself to be in that moment? And Brandon, I'll start with you, since we're gonna do like a reverse zigzag here.
Sorry, you kind of cut out a little bit. Can you ask the question again?
Yeah, so if you could go back to like pre-accepted Brandon, like before you got any of your acceptances, after you'd gone through the interview process, and you're sitting in that limbo that a lot of people are, or maybe you have one decision in, but you don't have all of them. What's one thing that you would say to yourself that to try to kind of ease the stress, or just advice to give to distract yourself, or get through that moment?
Yeah, I would just tell myself like I am enough. Most of the business school process is very self-selective. Like the reason that you're applying to business school, because you see something in yourself, you see something in your future, and you're going to be successful regardless of what school you get into. So know that no matter what decision you get, that you are enough, and go into it just seeing like, am I going to be successful at X school, Y school, or Z school? Because you're going to be successful at the end of the day, and give yourself grace even before finding out.
I like that. Give yourself grace. Ryan, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I think I mentioned earlier, I mean, the entire process just takes so much discipline, just, grinding, whether it be the GMAT applications. So just, take some time to reflect on why you did this all in the first place. And, to Brandon's point, whether or not you get in, that's not going to ultimately define the success of your career. It's going to come down to, who you are and how you perform. And then also remember that there's plenty of people that strike out and then get into their dream school the next year. So also just having that perspective and remembering why you went down this journey in the first place, and remembering that, even if it doesn't work out this cycle, there's plenty of lessons you can learn and apply to the following cycle. So just looking at everything with a, optimistic, positive angle. So
You're doing your best to.
Yeah.
Miranda, any thoughts to add here?
Very similar to Brandon. I would just say that let yourself feel however you want to feel. I like tried to be like, everything's gonna be okay, it's fine, like it is what it is. And I recognized that I was pigeonholing my feelings into like trying to be okay, and I wasn't necessarily okay. And I just like let myself feel that. Like it's a roller coaster of a process, especially as like some schools come out and some schools don't. And you have your highs and then you have your lows. And it happens within like 48 hours. And so I stopped probably like midway through my process. I stopped trying to figure out how, like, oh, feel this way, feel that way, try to do this, try to do that. And I just was like, let it come. Like whatever it is, whatever I feel, I'm going to get through this with my support system. And, if it sucks because I didn't get in or I got waitlisted or it wasn't my year, then be upset, be frustrated. If I got in and I, got scholarship or whatever, like I let myself be elated. So I just kind of gave myself space to feel however I wanted to feel in that moment and like acknowledge those feelings.
Very self-aware, honestly. It's just trying to pretend to feel something different than how you feel. It's really important. Kenny, any thoughts to add here?
Yeah, I would say, I think everybody's said a lot of great points. The one I would add is that try your best not to put your value in the business school acceptance itself, right? Any of these business schools, obviously they're going to offer the MBA as a degree, but you have value because of the things that you've worked hard for, the things that you've been able to accomplish at work and even in your extracurriculars, and the people that you have impacted. And those are very real. And you shouldn't take away from any of those because of an outcome in this business school application process. For me personally, throughout the process, had some pieces where I got rejected from schools, didn't get an interview that I thought I should or could have gotten. And what I realized coming towards the other end of it is that the right doors opened for me personally at the right time. And the doors that weren't really for me, that I couldn't see at the time, were closed. And that was the way it needed to be for me personally in my journey. And I think everybody can take some value in that and know that the things that are for you are really going to happen.
I made a note to come back to that doors, because one thing I do want to talk about is opportunity and just the things that you don't know are available to you before your MBA that become available as. I want to touch on that experience. I think it's really, really cool to share. But Brittany, do you want to take us home? Do you have anything to add on the original question?
I wouldn't say any better than what Kenny just did. I would just really say like what's meant for you will ultimately be for you. I'm a big believer in that. I think I would also have reminded myself that the test is one aspect of the application, and I really would have like believed that, because it really is just one part of a very holistic view into who you are as a person. And as someone that took the test 5 times, I think I wish I had learned that a lot sooner, and like moved on to other parts of my application that I thought I could really shine through a little bit better than just one element of a very holistic process. So would totally echo, don't let this be any defining factor in your self-worth, and what will be for you will be for you, and don't worry about one aspect of the entire process because it really is very quite holistic.
Yeah. So don't think about that one thing that like could keep you from getting what you want, or it's like, oh, if I had just done this, like kind of put your best foot forward at this stage. So I appreciate that. That's great advice. So yeah, let's get down to the next part of this process, which is the decision-making process, right? Which is, and this is the reason I wanted to ask and not dive right into this, is because just it's important to just remind everyone listening that you shouldn't just jump right to the next stress in your life, which is, which school do I want to go to? Do I want to go to business school? It's like, y'all take 2 days and be happy, like just chill for a second. That is like, if you take nothing else from this experience, like this panel, please take that away. So yeah, now as we get to this point, it's like, you've got options, you've received maybe some money from some schools, you no money from others, acceptances, wait lists, rejections. Talk us through the decision-making process for you specifically, and like structure it for us. So like what components did you look at? What did you weigh more heavily than others? And then I think most importantly, what have you learned since making that decision that you did correctly and you're happy that you did, or that maybe you would have gone back and done differently? And Brittany, again, I'll start with you and kind of work my way backwards.
Yeah, I think one thing that was a big factor in my decision was scholarship. So I had the privilege of getting into a few schools, and when it kind of came down to which schools I thought were the best fit for me, a lot of it was about fit and like what career outcomes I felt like I could have at a certain school. But I will say scholarship played a really big role in my decision to come to Tuck versus other schools. I also think what played a role ultimately, but wasn't as clear to me at the time, was also the size of the class. I think I am someone that does a lot better when there's fewer people. I think I engage in the classroom setting a lot more. I feel much more involved, and I feel much more equipped and ready to speak up in the classroom setting when there's not, let's say, 200 people in a room. That to me personally is very intimidating. So I think when I was looking at a couple different schools, like Tuck's small size, I think also played a much bigger role than I would have expected when I was originally looking at schools, when I was thinking about where I would be the most comfortable to bring my full self to the classroom and also allow me to engage fully in that experience as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Brittany. Kenny, any thoughts to add here?
Yeah, in terms of deciding between schools, I had actually put together like a bit of a spreadsheet, just how my mind works from my actuarial background. So I put together a spreadsheet of like 5 different things that were important to me. So the career outcome, the community, the job prospects, the MBA community itself, in terms of like other students, and then what I would really be able to get involved in, and kind of weighted those across schools. And that was like my first step in evaluating. Once I really got in, I'll note that I really thought I knew how I was going to decide when I was in the application process. And once I got the acceptances in hand, it changed everything. So I needed to basically redo this spreadsheet.
Okay, I'm going to test you here. What changed once you got in?
Yeah, I think what changed is, instead of thinking hypothetically about how I felt about the MBA community, once I got into the schools, and some of you will hopefully see this as well, once you get into the schools, you have access to the Admit portal. You may be interacting with a handful of the students who are also admitted along with you. And you really have these, maybe there's a handful of events in the decision window up to the deadline. And so when I was having those interactions, my viewpoint, my touch points to the school changed drastically, especially around like the MBA community and having those conversations with students. Now that I had an acceptance in my hand, I felt like I could have a richer conversation with the students. And so I think those things changed and they really impacted how I viewed the schools.
Very helpful. Thank you. Miranda, you have any thoughts to add there?
I mean, I feel like everyone kind of touched on what I would have touched on. The only thing that I would add is like, I thought about it also in regards to like the touch points I had prior. So one thing, to Brittany's point, like I did get scholarship at certain places, and that did change the way that I viewed those schools. I was like, oh, money is real. This is a real thing that I have to think about. When, to Kenny's point, I went into my MBA process recognizing that I wasn't going to index that much on scholarship. I was like, okay, even if I don't get money here, I want to go. And that quickly changed when I did get scholarship places, and I was looking at that as a vantage point. I would say the other thing is that I really indexed on, for me, being in Austin, it's like has been talked about as like the next like tech hub, and wanting to go into tech and knowing that that is what I wanted to do. And I wasn't going to pivot once I got into my MBA program. I indexed heavily on the fact that we have, 5 to 10 of the largest like tech firms in the world here, or like, and what that looked like networking wise, and what that looked like alumni resource wise, and like why that was going to be so important to me as I pivoted into such a competitive industry. So I really honed in on that, because that would increase my likelihood and opportunity and resource opportunity once I got on campus.
It's very helpful. Ryan, you're up next. Do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, don't underestimate fit. I'm sure some of you are going to be in a situation, which is a great situation to be in, where you're deciding between, two schools. One may be ranked a little higher than the other, but you feel like you would have a better time at the lower ranked one, and kind of reconciling that can be very difficult. And it kind of makes you weigh, the long-term value of maybe a higher ranking versus, how well you would actually enjoy your 2 years there. And it's a very personal decision, and there's no right formula or right answer. But I would just advise you all to don't underestimate like the actual 2 years that you spend at school. I know it's easy to get caught up in like the long-term value and the credential, but if you're at a school that maybe might be relatively lower ranked, but like those are your people, that's where you fit best, you're gonna shine brighter at that school. And again, it comes down to more of the person than the school, especially at the level of schools we're talking about. So just be careful how you kind of weigh those things. And again, there's no magic formula. It just takes a lot of reflection, but it's just funny that, this is a lifelong decision, but I think sometimes we underestimate the actual experience and like the actual 2 years of the program.
Brandon, I thank you, Ryan. Love to hear you close this out. I know your specific situation too, so very curious to hear and for you to share kind of with everyone like your decision-making process.
Yeah, I'd say for me, if I had to just tell someone like, oh, what should you not do, is like have money be the sole decision point. I think that, like I said, everyone who's applying to business school has inherently the drive. You're going to be successful. The money will come. So don't let money be the primary thing that drives you to choose whatever school you are. And I know that's tough, especially coming from people that may have like a socioeconomic status that isn't the best right now. I can't say like it will get better. I think also how I decided to select the school is like you're in. So whenever people apply to business school, they typically say, I want to do this one career path, but in actuality, they have 2 or 3 that they're thinking about. It's really up to you to be like, hey, this is what I really want to do. This is the school that's going to help me get to where I really want to get, even though it may not be exactly 100% flushed out what I said on my application. It's really up to you to be like, it's your decision. Another thing I want to say, like, you've made your hedge already, so you're at business school. Take risk. You look at the employment numbers at any of these schools, like they're super high. You're gonna get a job no matter what you do. That's why it's really important that you choose the school that helps you do what you really want to do. And for me, kind of, I guess I'd say, Ryan, I don't fully agree that that like you should focus too much on the 2 years, and it sounds weird, but you don't know who's coming to the class with you. All you can do is look to alum. So I feel like the long-term vision is the thing that guided me. I was like looking at the alums and seeing like, if I want to do X, how can they guide me? How can I reach out? How can I help? And that was really what helped me choose HBS. It's really a crapshoot. You don't know who's in the class with you, but all you can look at is the alums and just hope that the school has a history of admitting students who are doing positive things and who will help you in the future.
I think that speaks to just like, what Ryan said earlier, like there is no magic formula, right? Like it's important to take all the feedback that you hear from everyone and think to yourself, like, what am I weighting the most for me personally that gets me to the optimal state of, really at the end of the day, is satisfaction. You're never going to be at a place where for a fact you made the right decision. But to a place where you're at least comfortable with the way that you made that decision is the best you can do. And that's what we're hoping to get for you here. I do see some questions coming in on scholarships and like negotiation. I do want to say 2 weeks from now, we are hosting another panel, which is going to be specifically on financing your MBA. And we have a specific section where we cover that component. So if you're interested in learning like specific details about that, please tune in there. I have a question that I do want to follow up with you, Brandon, and that's, you spoke about kind of taking risks. What have you realized about your experience? This is for everyone, by the way. It's like, what have you experienced that you just could never have imagined prior to getting in? And how do those experiences impact the advice that you give regarding choosing even whether to go to an MBA or not, or whether to go to a school that may have costed you more than not? Just curious to kind of open the lens for people who haven't yet had that kind of first semester experience that you all have on this panel.
Yeah, I'd say, like I said, everyone who's applying to business school are fairly smart people, and we do a fairly good job at being able to calculate the downside of things. Like we know, like, hey, I want to position myself here so that I, make sure that after business school I have a job. We're really good at calculating the downside. What we're not as good at is calculating the upside and realizing the magical things that happen whenever you commit to something. So my personal story, I was deciding between Wharton and HBS, Wharton with full money and HBS with some scholarship. And really what helped me, I had to overcome choosing, the money and went to HBS. And what really helped me decide was I was doing nonprofit work in Ethiopia, and I was having issues with the government running into getting, permits for a certain project I was doing. And I reached out to one of the Energy Club co-presidents, and I was just explaining to her how I was just excited about the Energy Club. And I told her about my work in Ethiopia, and she's like, oh, I used to work in Ethiopia. And then she said, well, I'll connect you with here, and you should do this, you should do X, you should do Y, you should do Z. And what I was trying to work for like 3 months, she helped me solve in like a matter of a week. And I realized like, this is the place for me. This is the place where if someone will help me like this as an applicant, not even a student, I know I need to be at this place. And when I say the magical things happen when you commit, whenever I was like, okay, I think this is my hunch, I'm going to go with it. To answer the scholarship question, whenever you're a current student, the school helps you so much more than when you're just an applicant or you're thinking about accepting. So the school will make sure that you succeed, and they'll find extra money for you. And HBS did for me. So as I said, magical things happen when you commit, and I wouldn't have never been there had I chosen the money up front versus betting on myself and betting on that internal hunch and making it happen.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Brandon. Ryan, curious to hear, about your first semester experience and kind of just, again, like the unknown, the upside, and speaking to kind of you just reflecting again on your current self versus the past self of what is possible through an MBA.
Yeah, I think this question is a little school specific, so I'll try to answer it like broadly that will apply to a lot of schools. Is I've just been pretty blown away at the power of the network. I mean, I went through the structured consulting recruiting process, so just met a lot of alumni that way that were really helpful. But hearing all the stories of classmates that got, connected with Tuck alums from, 10, 20, 30 years ago, and hearing the stories about just how eager they are to help, that's just really been remarkable. And like, I think when I look back at my experience later down the road, I look forward to like being able to tap into that network in a more creative way than just recruiting for huge consulting firms. And I think I'm sure that applies at, a lot of the top schools. Is, once you are in, it does feel like you're part of a family, and you feel like you have, thousands of people that have your back, and just a lot of valuable resources that is definitely hard to quantify. So that's kind of been something that's, stood out to me so far.
Absolutely. Thank you. Brittany, I'm going to skip you just once because I don't want to go tuck. So Miranda, any thoughts here on just reflecting on your growth in the first semester and new opportunities that you didn't think were possible?
Yeah, I would just say something that I feel like every business school talks about is like the diversity of the classroom, and how you'll go into the classroom and learn so much, not just from your professors, obviously, but from your peers. And when you think about it, you're like, yeah, of course, like the world's diverse. I learn stuff from people all the time, but you don't actually consider how phenomenally brilliant your classmates are until you sit down and you're learning finance for the first time, or you're trying to do a model, you're building a decision model, and someone can just as easily explain it to you as the professor, or you're connecting on a business idea or a new business venture, and you have 3 other people that are just as passionate, and they have people within their network that can help. So I would say that something that I really leaned into as I kind of learned or experienced this throughout my first semester and even in my second semester is like really leaning on your classmates and diving into those types of conversations in class and even outside of class. And when they say the classroom is diverse and you will learn as much from your classmates as you will from your professors, they mean it. And I'm sure I can speak for all the schools on this panel and above that is absolutely the case, hands down.
Brittany, I see you nodding your head there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm nodding my head for everything because I feel like all of this is so relevant to my own experience. But I think in reflecting on my first year or first semester, I think a lot of it has been about like embracing the discomfort that may come with like being in business school and not feeling like you know everything for probably like for some of us maybe the first time in our life, especially if you're coming from a job where you were kind of like an expert in something. And I know that was for me a bit of a learning curve. I think also like embracing moments where you have the opportunity to be brave in the sense of like for me, for example, like raising my hand in class was a bit of a mental gymnastics for me for a while, but especially in the beginning. But I think once I kind of embrace that, like I'm gonna put my hand up and like embrace this discomfort that's gonna come, there's so much growth that happens in that decision to actually do the thing that makes you uncomfortable. So I guess for me, I've definitely noticed a lot more like self-confidence in the past semesters that I've spent at Tuck. And I also think with that self-confidence empowers me to take more risks when it comes to my career in a meaningful, thoughtful way, of course, but more so in terms of like betting on myself or just betting on yourself in general, which is honestly the key to success anyways. You just have to really make sure that you yourself know that you are capable and worth it and able to make what you want happen. And I think like being in this environment has definitely helped me kind of bridge that gap that I definitely feel like was pitfall before for me personally in my career.
Thank you. No, I'm not in my head too. I'm like that. Yeah, it's all super relevant. Kenny, you want to take us home here and just reflecting and again, just passing advice on to folks who are deciding to go for the first year and having made that decision on where to go. Like now that you've gone through like you're part of your MBA experience, what is one thing that you wish you kind of had considered or known that you just wasn't open to you, like because you haven't had that experience yet?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I've loved everybody's responses. My story is actually pretty similar to Brandon's, actually. For those who knew me in the application process, I had gotten all the way to the end of the decisions looking at Kellogg and Tuck, similarly had a full scholarship at Tuck and a partial at Kellogg, and decided to bet on myself there. And after the decision deadline had passed, a few months had gone by, and Kellogg had actually reached out to include me as part of a full scholarship program that they have here. So similarly, betting on myself.
The money's just falling on trees over here.
Yeah, very, very blessed for that, obviously, and I celebrated again on that day. But to your point, taking advantage of some of the things in the MBA experience itself, I think what's been really interesting is I've seen students who came in with really focused goals that they wanted to accomplish, and because of opportunities that coincidentally got presented in front of them or new business ideas, they ended up dropping everything of their goals, like first years who were with me, of dropping those things and then pursuing this brand new idea. So I've got one friend who's now pursuing a company with 3 other Kellogg MBA students that's going to be like a moving platform for grad students and MBAs. I mean, I even remember meeting the people from Juno, coming back to this conversation, who were similarly MBA students and started this fantastic organization and company. So I think what's great about the MBA is you can come in with some of your own goals and ideas, and you're obviously all here because you're really intentional and you take those calculated risks, but super important to be open and flexible to anything that comes in front of you, whether that's an in-semester internship or working with a friend just to see if an idea has legs to stand on. Kellogg, along with all of the MBA programs, have resources that can really support you, whether that's kickstarting an idea or having conversations about pursuing something you're really interested in. Just being flexible and then making those ideas that you have known to others. You'll be really surprised who can raise their hand and help you or put you in touch with somebody who can really push you forward.
Love that. So we have a question I just am going to ask out loud because I just think it's so fascinating to hear your thoughts. And I'm not going to call on you because it's not a question I told you I was going to ask. So feel free if you want to give a perspective to speak up first. But it's from Jessica. For those of you dealing with it that had dealt with a tough decision, did you have a moment of clarity in when your decision just became clear? And if so, what was that moment of clarity? So the question is like, is there ever clarity in that decision? Do things come like it's just a sign from the universe on what you have to do, or was your experience a little bit different? Kenny, all right, man.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one since I just mentioned my decision. I had a really, really difficult time deciding. I was having conversations between both schools really up until the day before the decision deadline. And basically the realization that I had towards the end is not something that's going to feel, like revolutionary, but I really felt like I just had to make a decision on all of the intangibles about the school. Like I told you, I put together a spreadsheet. I, tried to put numbers around these different ideas, and all of it kind of fell flat when I felt I needed to make a decision, and just had to really decide on a gut feeling. But I felt really, really torn about it, even after I made the decision even after I reached out to the people that I'd been connected with, and told them that I wasn't going to be going there, but just felt really torn. For me personally, I did not have this moment of clarity where everything aligned perfectly. It was tough all the way through, but I think I felt better a few days after my decision. And then I slowly started to realize that the decision that I made was the right choice for me personally.
It's super helpful.
I can jump in here as well. This isn't the most helpful answer, but I think it was most clear to me like after I got to school that I made the right decision. And I think that's from a variety of experiences that I've had at school, whether that's through like interpersonal connections that I made with students that I feel like I would have never really met had we not obviously been at the same school, but even like cross paths in other ways at school, whether that's through new experiences, or even being able to have like real relationships with professors, which I definitely did not have in undergrad. And just the different opportunities to really feel as though I have like a very close connection with people like throughout Chuck. And that even includes like faculty and administration, right? And not just students. So I feel like having those moments of like really feeling as though I'm like deeply connected to someone made me really feel as though I was at the right school. I think also in terms of just the support that we receive from, again, administrative and faculty members, because we are very small, I think also further solidified that for me as someone that came in knowing they wanted to work at a startup, but not sure exactly what type. It was very much so in an exploration process. I always felt very supported by our centers. And I think because we have a lot of students that do more traditional career paths, it just felt like I had so much personal attention and support to really figure out what it is that I wanted to do, both with my career this summer and also long-term. So I think everything kind of came together for me once I got here, which is like kind of a tricky way to like answer the question you originally posed. But I think a lot of it goes to just like, you have to like trust your gut and like be willing to take a risk, and see it through and see where it lands. But I think generally speaking, when you make a bet at any of these schools, you're not really gonna fail.
And I actually want to speak to this because I had the great honor of being in MLT with a lot of you, and Ryan and I actually go way farther back than that. We worked together, for years before this. And so like looking at everything from just like knowing 300 people that have all gotten into great business schools and are going to these different places. I went through this. I'm not downplaying the decision, but to a certain extent, it's like Brandon had said a few times, it's self-selecting. Like the fact that you have the decision to make, I mean, you are already, go like moving in the direction that you need to move. Like the logo behind me could be interchanged in any 15, 20 schools. Doesn't actually change who I am. It really just comes down to what matters most to you when you're deciding, and like trying to cut out the noise. And maybe you start with things that don't matter the most to you to kind of dwindle that down. But at the end of the day, like, I had a pretty difficult decision to make as well. I ended up deferring, and again, it was that decision that I made to like not go through this process with all my friends that I just met and kind of wait a year was like just predicated on the things that had mattered most to me. But I will say, just like whatever decision that you're making isn't going, like the thing that I take away the most, I'm trying to like kind of express this, is like a lot of you have said, like, I felt good once I was in school and I know I had made the right decision. It's like, almost like this trepidation of like, oh, what if I make the wrong choice? But I would encourage you to think like there actually is no wrong choice. You have great options here. Pick the one that low-key you just want to do the most, right? And like you will be happy. Like there's more upside than infinitely more upside than downside here. So we're almost at time, and I want to wrap this up. So I guess if there's kind of like a quick blurb, like what's one thing, that we want the folks who are listening here have been with us for an hour to kind of take away from this, what would that be? And again, I'll just, open up to 2 or 3 of you to kind of just give that final piece of advice as we close this out.
I can
I'll go
start.
first.
Just kidding. Go ahead.
All right, you sure? Okay. I'll be quick. I would just say, get in the habit of being really good at reflection. I think during the year of applying to schools and just kind of crafting my essays and thinking about why I want to go to school in the first place, it was super important to get into that habit and just like understand myself and my goals a little better. But that definitely doesn't stop when you get to school. So like the further you can, stretch that muscle before you get here, it just becomes even more important because these 2 years do fly by. I cannot believe it's almost April. I feel like I just got here. And so just, when you do get here, make sure you're being intentional about what you want to accomplish and what you want to prioritize while you're here. So I'll leave it at that.
I would just say, be sure to be your own advocate. I think everything that we've discussed here has been around, like self-reflection, as Ryan said, and advocating for yourself. But I would say that in the sense that not everyone, and we've discussed this before, I think amongst ourselves as panelists, how like throughout the process, not everyone will be an advocate for you. Not everyone's going to say, oh my gosh, you got into business school, congratulations. Your employer might not be happy. Your parents might not be happy. Some people in your own circle might not understand why you did this, what you're doing, and if it even matters. And it's not something we touched about heavily, but I would say just always be your own advocate. Take the time to acknowledge your congratulations, your acceptances, even a little bit of your failures, and acknowledge that, be proud of where you are, be proud of where you're going, and make sure that you continue to advocate for yourself now and then moving forward while you guys go into business school.
Yeah, I'll go next. I'd say just, did I disconnect? Okay. Yeah, I would say just, take advantage of it. I have a little feedback. Am I?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Take advantage of every interaction. You're going to be going to school with some amazing people. Every interaction, whether it's like a quick chat or like a long, talk with like a classmate or something like that, take advantage of every interaction. It's just been great just meeting people. I didn't realize the depth of interaction I'm going to have and that how long your connections last. So take advantage of it.
Well, guys, so we're at time. I think there's some questions trickling in. Happy to kind of stay on and answer them. I don't know if all the panelists, you're free to go. If you have top off, you want to stay and chat, we'll hang out for a bit to let people filter out. Next week, this same time, same day of the week, we're going to be having a conversation on pre-MBA internships. So when to do one, when not to do one, how to go about the recruiting process, the different opportunities available to you, context of, that whole conversation, how to spend your summer. And then the week after, we're going to be having a conversation on financing your MBA. So budgeting, travel, tips and tricks to stretch your budgets. There's a Juno component that we're going to touch on. There's tax savings and advantages that we discussed too, like 529 plans and other things like that. But yeah, let us know if you think the feedback is helpful. I'll leave my email here too if you have specific questions for me. But folks, it's been a genuine pleasure to speak with you all, and I hope that everyone here attending had as much value and honestly fun as I did to speak to you guys. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Pedro, for hosting.
My pleasure.